Hey y'all, it's Wendy, aka the Thrifty Sewist. If you're new here, thanks so much for checking me out. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for coming back. Today I want to shoot a very quick video on how to quarter and attach a neckband. So this is a super beginner video. If you're already well seasoned in attaching neckbands, this probably isn't the video for you. This is my shirt. It is completely finished except for the neckband. I also shot a video on how to do this applique embroidery. So if you are interested, I will go ahead and link it up in the corner now. But yeah, let's go ahead and just get right into it. All right, so step one is optional, but I always like to do it because it makes things a lot easier. And that is to press your neckband in half with wrong sides together. Very important. You want the wrong sides to be together because the neckband will need to be folded in half anyway once you attach it. So this just makes it easier to fold after you sew the short ends together. Okay, the only thing you have to be careful of is if you have a fabric that really doesn't press well, like some athletic knits and things like that, I would skip this step, but otherwise I do it every time. So first I'm just going to kind of press it flat here. This is a cotton lycra, so it does like to curl up a lot. Okay, and now that it's flat, you literally just fold it in half and press. Okay, so I like to kind of get it started, hold it a little bit, and then put the iron on, and then while that's pressing, I like to fold up the rest of it. And then I like to give it lots of steam, just so that it really gets a good crease in there. Okay, and that's it. Once again, optional step. I don't recommend skipping it. It will make your life a lot easier later on. Okay, next step is unfold that crease that you just made. And then you're going to sew the short ends together, right sides together. So you pressed it in half, wrong sides together. Now you're going to sew it right sides together. So just be careful, especially on, a print like this, that it looks the same on the front and the back. Just make sure that you are sewing it right sides together. My seam allowance for the pattern that I am making is a 1/2 inch, so I'm going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance to sew this together. I'm going to use my serger, and I will be right back. All right, so I have my short ends sewn. So the next step is to flip it right sides out and then to fold it in half again. And this is why that memory crease comes in very handy, because look how fast and easy that folded in half. So yeah, I definitely recommend that memory crease. Okay, so next step is to quarter it, meaning to divide it into fourths. Now, if you can see here, my seam, my center back seam is going to be my first point. Okay, so I'm going to mark that with a clip. And then what you're going to do is fold it in half, and you could do it before you clip it as well. It doesn't matter. It might be even a little bit easier to fold it before you clip it. But fold it in half at that center back seam. And then the half point where, or like the center point where it's folded, is going to be your second point. I hope that makes sense. So you're going to mark that with a clip as well, or a pin, or you can use a marking tool, like an erasable pen. Okay, and now we have 2 of our points. So from here, you just match up the 2 points, and then these ends here are your other 2 points. So then you would just mark those as well. That's 1. Match up the 2 center points once again. And then this other halfway point is going to be my 4th point. Okay, so we have our neckband quartered. We're going to do the same exact thing with our neckline. So you want to start by folding the front bodice in half. Okay, if you remember when you're cutting out your pattern pieces, you can mark the center front and the center back. I don't always remember. So if you don't have it marked, you can just fold it in half like this, mark that center point. Okay, do the same thing for the back, fold it in half, and then mark that center point. And then you're going to match up your 2 clips to get your other 2 points. Now, it's very important to note that your shoulder seams are almost never quarter points. So don't just assume that those are the other 2 points and then mark those, because if you do that, you may risk overstretching or understretching your neckband, and it won't look as nice. So you're going to just match up your 2 clips, fold it in half, and then mark that point. And you will see after I mark this that, as I said, the shoulder seam is not my quarter point. My quarter point is actually before the shoulder seam. So then to find my last point, once again, match up the center points, fold the rest in half, and then mark my last quarter point. All right, so we got that quartered. Now the next thing is to match up our quarter points on the neckband and the neckline. Okay, so I like to put my seam, my center back seam, in the center back of the shirt. Some people like to do the side. It's up to you. It doesn't matter. What's important is you want to make sure that the side that you want to be showing once the neckband is sewn on, you want that side to be touching your fabric. So right sides together, but you want the good side, so to speak, to be touching your fabric. So what do I mean by that? This one doesn't matter because it's stripes, right? But let's say I have a directional print, like, I don't know, smiley faces or something. And the smiley faces were upside down on this side, but right side up on this side. I want to make sure that whatever side I want to show, that's the side that is touching my fabric. Because if you see here, what you're going to do is it's going to be sewn on like this, but then you're going to flip it up. Okay, so this side is the one that's going to show. I hope that makes sense. So just be careful. And if you're unsure, pin it on and then flip it up and see how it looks and make sure that's how you want it to look. Okay, so like I said, mine doesn't matter because mine's stripes, so it's the same on either side. So I'm going to find my center back seam, and I'm going to start with aligning that to my center back neckline. So I'm just going to take my shirt, just slip the neckband right over it, match up my 2 clips. I'm just going to remove 1 clip because I have the points aligned. Oops, and then just clip this second clip right through. I don't know if my fingers are in the way here, but clip that right through all the layers. When you're clipping or pinning, remember you do have 3 layers here. So you want to make sure that you don't miss a layer. This is another reason why the memory crease comes in handy, because then your 2 raw edges of your neckband are lined up. You don't want to clip it on and have like something like this, where this inner portion of the neckband is like slid down and then you won't catch it when you're sewing. Okay, so that's 1 quarter point. Next, I just move around the circle. So here's my next point, match it up to my next clip, and don't worry right now about how much space there is in between here, okay, because we're gonna stretch it when we're sewing. Just make sure that your neckband isn't twisted or anything. You want to make sure it's going in the same direction all the way around. So match up your points, take one clip off, and then clip all 3 layers together. Moving right around. Just repeat the process for all 4 points. Last one. And you can see that I did pin that wonky, so I want to make sure to take my pin off and make sure everything's smooth and flat and make sure everything is pinned together. Okay, so here's what it looks like, all pinned on. Now, it's not going to sit flat right now because it still has to be sewn on. But what you're going to do, and the reason that we quarter it, is so that we know how much to stretch this when sewing it on. So if I only pinned, say, the front and the back, I would have this big space to kind of stretch as I sew, and maybe I would stretch it more here and not enough here, and then I would get puckering. So we quarter it so that we have an even distance between all the points, and then we only have to stretch it a little bit. So it just makes it easier to sew it on more evenly, if that makes sense. So when you're sewing this on, you're going to use whatever seam allowance the pattern calls for, and you're going to gently stretch just the neckband. Do not stretch the shirt. The shirt is already longer than the neckband is, okay? And the reason for needing to stretch the neckband instead of them being even is because once you sewed it on, the neckband would just be stretched out. So pattern designers make it so that the neckband has to be stretched just enough for it to sit flat once it's sewn on the garment. Okay, so you're going to stretch just the neckband and not the neckline of the bodice. And you're stretching it only enough until it's flat and even with the bodice. So I barely have to stretch this particular one at all. Okay, and then you're just going to continue sewing, again, stretching at each quarter point only enough so that everything is flat and even. You don't want anything puckered or any, excess like this. You want it just flat. All right, so let me take you over to the serger and I'll show you that in action. Okay, so we're over at the serger and I hope that this angle is okay. I have a really tight space where my machines are, so this was the best I could do. Let me actually do this. Okay, hopefully that's a little bit better. All right, so I like to always start in the back, right around the center back seam, okay? And what I'm going to do is just kind of stretch this a little bit, get everything nice and even and flat, okay? It's all nice and flat, and then put it under my foot and keep it stretched. Now, the reason I do that is so that I get it started evenly with no puckers or anything like that, and it just comes out a lot neater. So I put it under my foot, okay, put my presser foot down, I'm going to remove my clip, and I like to sew just enough stitches so that the fabric actually gets under the needle. Okay, so now my fabric is under my needle, so I can let it go, and then I'm going to straighten everything out. And I'm going to stretch again at my next quarter point. So I'm going to pull it once again just enough so that everything is nice and flat. Again, make sure that all 3 edges are aligned. You don't want this down here or, the neckband down there, because then you won't catch it in your stitching. Okay, so stretch it just enough. Don't overstretch it. Make sure all your raw edges are aligned, and then hold it at the quarter point while you continue to sew. Okay, and then just repeat the same thing all the way around. Straighten it out again. I'm going to remove my pin, straighten everything out and make sure my raw edges are aligned, and then continue sewing. All right, once again, straighten everything out, remove my pin, stretch it just enough, and sew. Okay, almost done. Last quarter point was where we started. Remove my pin, make sure everything's flat, and just make sure that any fabric down here, that you kind of just push that out of the way so that that doesn't get caught in your seam. Okay, pull this up to be even, and then finish. All right, and that's all there is to it. Then you flip it up and you have your neckband. Now notice, there are no puckers. It's nice and smooth and flat all the way around. That is what you want, okay? It may take some practice, but you can do it. It's really not that hard, especially if you quarter it, okay? Now, the last step would be to top stitch this. I'm gonna skip that, but it does make it look nice and professional. So all you would do is you would use either a twin needle, a stretch stitch on your sewing machine, or a cover stitch machine, and just make sure that your seam allowance is pressed down, so down towards your bodice, just like this. And then you would just top stitch it from the outside all the way around. Okay, that's it. Zoom you out here. And there we go, our finished shirt. All right, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that helped you with your neckbands. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below in the description. Like the video, hit that subscribe button. Let me know what else you'd like to learn about sewing. Until next time, bye.